Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We are now getting started with our next session here on day 2 of the Bangalore Literature Festival. Our next session is the Tale of Two Spies. What comes out when rival spy chiefs turn collaborators and produce rip-roaring works of fiction? We have with us Asad Durrani. Lieutenant General Mohammad Asad Durrani is a retired 3-star rank general in the Pakistan Army and presently a commentator, speaker, and author. Durrani previously served as the Director General of the Inter-Services Intelligence and former Director General of the Pakistan Army's Military Intelligence. It's great to have you with us, Durrani Sahab. Thank you for joining.
Welcome.
We also have A.S. Dulat, who is a former Special Director of the Intelligence Bureau and the former Chief of the Research and Analysis Wing from 1999 to 2000. After retirement, he was appointed as advisor on Kashmir in the Prime Minister's office and served there from January 2000 to May 2004. Dulat is a member of the National Security Advisory Board and is regarded as one of India's leading experts on Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you for joining us, Dulat Sahab.
Thank you.
In 2018, Asad Durrani and A.S. Dulat co-authored The Spy Chronicles, Raw, ISI, and the Illusion of Peace. And they will be in conversation with Anand Arni, a distinguished fellow of the Geostrategy program at the Takshashila Institution, Bangalore. He was formerly Special Secretary in the Research and Analysis Wing. A career intelligence officer, he served in India's External Intelligence Agency for 37 years before retiring in 2012. Thank you so much for joining us, Anand Arni. A quick update for those of you who have questions for our speakers, please feel free to use our Q&A section. And for those of you in the audience, if you could let me know later in the section, the last 5 to 10 minutes, you could use this mic to pose your question to the panel. And with that, over to you, Mr. Arni.
Good afternoon, everybody. General Durrani, Mr. Dulat, and the BLF for bringing us all together in this virtual world. It's a privilege to be here with Lieutenant General Asad Durrani and Mr. A.S. Dulat. Their bios will be available. I don't want to spend too much time on that. Briefly, I will say that General Durrani was DG ISI from August 1990 to February 92. And before that, he was DG MI. Mr. Dulat was head of R&AW 99 to later in 2000 and had come to R&AW after 3 decades in the IB. My connect with them is that Mr. Dulat was my boss when I was on R&AW, and I got to meet Mr. General Durrani as part of a track 2 dialogue, as one of the track 2, actually the one dialogue which led to his writing The Spy Chronicles, which is the subject of the next book, which led to a contentious, this proved contentious, and there was a backlash, and that led to the next book, which he wrote. Now, there's another connect that I have with General Durrani, which I don't know if he knows, that during this entire period as DGISI, I was on his turf. I was in Karachi during that period. Now, coming to the session, I received a number of requests on social media and phone calls from friends and others that if we could get the two chiefs talking about peace, between the prospects of peace. My first question, therefore, will start from that, and let's see what happens. My first part of it, the first question in this subsection, or first part of this subsection, would be to General Durrani. You're first. You had suggested that I describe you as a former ISI chief who does not believe peace on the subcontinent was anywhere on the horizon, but would like to support his comrade in arms, in service, and life thereafter, A.S. Dulat, in the latter's efforts to improve our bilateral relations. General, the question is this: is it that conditions are not appropriate? And what comes in the way of bilateral normalization? Are we destined to repeat what you say, Naveen Sheikh, that Nawaz Sharif did, that you cannot leave the army. The mistakes that Nawaz Sharif did, are we destined to commit it over and over again? You cannot leave the army out of the picture. And you, in fact, admit that it acts in a sort of a tactical manner, whereas the politicians are there for the long haul and can outlast the military. Now it's over to you, General.
Thank you, Anand. I mean, this was probably the only subject on which Mr. Dulat and myself had a problem agreeing. And that was considering the environment, not only the present one, but the last 20, 30 years, the relationship between two countries, the equation that we have. India was known to be a status quo power. What I did not know before I started handling it was a strictly status quo power, always reluctant to make any move up or down because it had things under control. It could manage whatever was the dynamics of the thing. And God forbid, from the Indian side, if anything moved, even for better, it may get out of control. Now, that was my thesis that had been there for a long time. But Mr. Dulat, being the man that he is, always believed that things can improve, should improve, they would be. And I have no problem. Someday they will. And whenever they will, and that is where the book started, if they do, how is it that we're going to go around doing or managing the development so that we come to that particular stage where one could say that now we are on our way to peace. And that was the idea of this book. We described the framework, various subjects, and later on said at the appropriate time, maybe this is something that one will have to do incrementally over a period of time, take smaller steps till we come to a stage where we can say that at least the process is now irreversible, even though it would not be an ideal normalization, but at least it has gone to that stage where it has taken roots and we can look forward to that. Now that was the entire discussion in this book, if I have to sum up.
Mr. Dulat, I'm going to ask you your view on this issue. Your view has been that there's very little prospect of peace or even engagement at the present. But that is what exactly makes our engagement important, and we have to keep trying. Mr. Dulat, you're also in RNDW when the Lahore bus trip went awry and landed up in Kargil. You were in the PMO when Agra happened. Later, of course, Musharraf reached out to Manmohan Singh. Is it something like, are we really like ships at sea? When we are ready, they are not. When they are, we deter. Your views on this issue.
Thank you, Anand. First of all, you referred to me as boss. I think there's only one boss here, and that's General Durrani. And when he says we had a disagreement, actually, I've never disagreed with him. He's always right. And things are not, I would go along with him that things are not exactly ideal for a forward movement. But the question that arises is that if we don't move forward, then what do we do? This stable stalemate, as you call it, sir, I don't think it's going to get us anywhere. In any case, looking at the stalemate, or if we call it the status quo, it might serve Pakistani interests, but I don't think it serves any Indian interest. And because we have problems and you have problems as well. Where I agree with you is that right now, let us say both sides, there are governments which are sort of seem to have given up on moving forward. But ultimately, this is a question of will, you know, and there are no excuses, I would say, for not trying, not venturing to move forward. And but um, how does it start? How will it start? Like you said, this is a different kind of time and a different kind of government in Delhi. So people here expect that something will be offered to them on a plate, and I don't know why Prime Minister Imran Khan didn't send any sweets for Diwali, or whether General Bajwa didn't think of calling up Ajit Doval this time. If you recall, sir, when we used to meet in the intelligence back channel or whatever it was called, I repeatedly pleaded that when friends from across said that nothing is happening, I said you got to make things happen, and I had made a suggestion that our national security advisor should be invited to Pakistan and lay out the red carpet for him, get him to Lahore, get something moving, But yeah, there is a sort of a stalemate, and it's very unfortunate because ultimately things have to happen. What is the other option? I can't think of anything else, and I think who was it? President Kennedy, who said that we should never negotiate out of fear, but we should never fear to negotiate. So I think there's every reason to try and move. And this thing, I've heard Pakistani friends say that, okay, we can help you with a better relationship with China, and you need to help us in Afghanistan or something like that. Now, I would say if such a proposition was being made, rather than offering us, a better handle or a better way with China, if Pakistan really needs help in Afghanistan, I can't imagine it, but if it does, then maybe that's a good way to start.
Let me come to you, General. Now, in a recent interview, you said that India has not always been the biggest threat for us. And this fits in nicely with our own understanding, or you may consider it biased, but it's been our understanding that the raison d'etre, if you will, of the Pakistan Army's continued importance to Pakistan is prefaced on some degree of hostility with India. We also have our fault lines. Pakistan becomes a convenient bogey at number of times, number of places, and everything seems to be blamed on Pakistan. Can you talk to us about the army's role in Pakistan, selecting leaders, controlling the narratives, and if the army does really exercise a veto in issues related to India, can we not give the army a stake in better relations? That's my question.
First, this bit about India not being the main threat. I mean, firstly, one can say that it is always so that the main threat is internal in every country. That is the one that you have to take care of, regardless of what happens outside. The second point was that during the last couple of years, I think there have been so many problems within India because of 370, because of Citizens Act, because of certain turmoil, that people are now more involved within themselves. So that's not going to, put India as the number one threat to Pakistan. There is also a practical way of looking at it. After all, these are those threats that we have been living with for the last 50, 60, 70 years. If we have muddled through, if we have managed it, how does that become now the main threat? And maybe lastly, if I have to be very briefly, we have now challenges on the Western front. For example, how do we manage now the relationship? We used to balance between Iran and Saudi Arabia. That's become very difficult. In the region we have now, Afghanistan beyond, there are other dynamics that are playing out. So that is why I said we are not going to now just keep harping on one thing, and that is India, India, India. Indo-centric, we were not Indo-centric. In my period, Anand, you were there. I think we were more involved elsewhere. We were more involved in Afghanistan. So that is what it is. As far as the army's veto is concerned, I do not believe army had a veto. The problem was that so many other people would not come up with something, will not make the policy that they were supposed to do. And they would either abdicate or they would let the army, determine or lay down the framework. But despite everything, it has never been possible for one institution alone, whether it's the Foreign Office or the government or the army or the armed forces, to all by themselves lay down a particular narrative on security. It is always a combined effort. In Pakistan, it has usually been, if not dominated, well, very largely influenced by whatever may come out from the GHQ. And that is also a perception because the GHQ does not give out one narrative. GHQ also has, a couple of things that they go and present to the people. So these are those misperceptions that have occurred. But essentially, yes, I do believe India has never been, and certainly not nowadays, the main threat. The main threats are internal, and nowadays we have more problems within the country, economic, political, and of course the relationship between various factions.
You touched briefly on what this from the Indian point of view. What do you think India from the Pakistani point? What does India need to do more to improve relations? And leave aside Kashmir, that's not an issue that's going to work. But what are the other things that India could do? Tell me as a Pakistani.
I mean, that was, I think, simple. This whole book, Spy Chronicles, was about that. What is it these two countries need to do? At least get out of that mindset and say somewhere you do start step by step, take one. Many frameworks that came from India. Gujarat Doctrine, of course, I blame that I'm a very big fan of Gujarat Doctrine. I do believe he was a very wise man. But even when we came up with the composite dialogue formula, which again I think was Gujarat's master, I thought that was one thing very good. You start addressing certain smaller issues. Mr. Dulat calls them the low-hanging fruit, the things that can be taken care of quickly. The thing that comes in the way, I mean, that is the theoretical framework. It also sounds very sensible. The thing that comes in the way is, and I just get stuck with that, status quo business. The deep state, we have a deep state. Your deep state is very strong, and that deep state, just holds back, does not let anything at all move forward. Not even the visa thing, not even the cultural thing, no trades. So even those things which may not be, earth shaking, that can be easily taken care of, if those do not happen, and I do not want to say that India alone is responsible, but as a bigger country, yes, it has probably a little more than the 50% share in this. So it can show either magnanimity or share little accommodation. And that is where what takes me back to Gujarat, who actually had the right idea about the region.
Mr. Dulat, you are known for your views on Kashmir. Has the revocation of Article 370 changed the situation? General Durrani is on record of saying that Pakistan, by changing its status on Gilgit-Baltistan, has hurt Pakistan's cause in Kashmir. Is there anything here? I mean, what are your views on these two steps? What can you tell us on what is happening now?
You see, in my view, Anand on 370 always has been that there is nothing in 370. It's no big deal, you know. It was a hollow provision. Nothing was left of it. At most, I used to call it a fig leaf for the Kashmiris. But having abrogated 370, naturally it excites people in Kashmir. But again, you know, General Saab will call me the eternal optimist, but my way of thinking, I think the Kashmiri could reconcile to Article 370, abrogation of 370. And if the Kashmiri could reconcile to it, then I don't see any reason why Imran Khan would not reconcile to it. Because here I'd like to go back to my old friend, General Musharraf, who I think was the most reasonable from our point of view. Again, the general may not agree on Kashmir. And he repeatedly said, whatever is acceptable to Kashmir and the people of Kashmir would be acceptable to Pakistan. So my point is that if Kashmir and people in Kashmir are reconciled to the abrogation of 370, then I don't think it should be a big deal with Pakistan. And, you know, talking about what General Saab said about low fruit and all that, I think we are at a stage now that nothing is going to happen bottom up. Whenever it happens, it'll have to happen from the top, you know, with some kind of summit or something. Somebody has to have the imagination. Maybe Modi ji should invite, the weather is beautiful here in Delhi these days, should invite Imran Khan to Hyderabad house for makki ki roti and sarson ka saag, something like that. You know, the point I'm trying to make is that Kashmir can be resolved and can be resolved not only between Delhi and Srinagar, but even between Delhi and Islamabad. It's a question of moving forward. And again, you know, you mentioned the failure of the bus diplomacy. I thought it was from India's point of view, from Vajpayee's point of view, I thought it was a great move, his taking that bus to Lahore. And Vajpayee was one of those politicians. He was a very smart politician. But he also believed that this permanent confrontation with Pakistan cannot go on. It's pure madness. And when he went to Lahore, he said that, with Nawaz Sharif standing by his side, कि हम जंग नहीं होने देंगे, and that war is not an option. And Dr. Manmohan Singh, one must give him credit, followed on that. But somehow he couldn't complete it. One of the tragedies of 10 years of Dr. Manmohan Singh's rule is that he could not visit Pakistan because people around him won't let him go to Pakistan. I think there was a great window of opportunity in 2006, 2007, when it appeared that Musharraf was still in control. Something could have happened. Now the question is, what can happen? You know, the Kashmiri talks of it as the full and final settlement of Kashmir. And I think General Saab goes along with it. But I look at it more piecemeal, that if there were to be an understanding, we could have at least 15 years of peace in Kashmir. So there are ways of moving forward. I'm not one of those people who believe that nothing can happen. And I think, you know, because Modi ji is very much his own man. So if he wants something to happen, it will happen.
General, let me get to the crux of your problems, your travails with the establishment, the one which brought you into collision with the khakis. I'm not revealing any secrets here, but I, for one, and I was in service at that point, was convinced that there was no way that they ever taken out Uzma, your friend, I mean, or Osama, whatever, without some sort of assistance, not just from a colonel or a brigadier in the ISI's CT desk, but from other organs of the state. That's not the issue. I mean, it had to be some assistance. The only place where I would probably, I mean, there are matters of detail, of some minor detail here and there, which I would differ with you. One is I don't see helicopters coming in all the way from Jalalabad and coming into Abbottabad and going back, and it's not so easy at night to refuel slow-moving, it will be there on everybody's radar screens. It had to come somewhere else, probably Mangla, but I'm not going to draw you into that unless you want to. Once you spoke to BBC, there was a pushback with even Kayani, whom you profess a great deal of admiration, or at least he was one of your favored students, or one of your better students, egging on Bajwa to cut you down. What happened really? Was Spy Chronicles, I mean, obviously Spy Chronicles was a convenient bogey. Were you too close to the truth, and you're not even sitting in Pakistan when that happened? If you could, sitting wherever you are, guess at some facts. Well, tell me all this. Tell me about this.
That's right, Anand. I think, let me say that was our moment of shame in many respects, that some people, if they were not very happy with my assessment, and there was another person who had some personal score to settle with me, once my boss, you know him, Beg, you're right, there are no more any secrets, because those secrets have been in one way or the other, either in the Honor Among Spies or otherwise in the discussions here, they've come out. Now they are the ones, and if it happens in this manner, that people, because of an assessment or because of their inherited problem or the tribal problem with me, would be looking for an opportunity, and what better chance to pounce upon a person than this fellow has now co-authored a book with the enemy, or with the former head of an enemy spy agency. That makes such a good sense. When I say it's a matter of shame, is that in due course, when it comes out, how do we start looking at ourselves? How do we now try and project this organization, institution elsewhere? Although I'll have to say that it is not because of the institution, it is because of certain important people somewhere. So that is what happened. As far as the Osama bin Laden thing is concerned, I was not sure. I just gave my assessment over a period of time. That was my great luck, that during these 2.5 years, a little before that, but 2.5 years, one came to certain conclusions, and which have confirmed my assessment, which have confirmed my suspicion, and also revealed a couple of other things about which one is not terribly happy. But at least now I know that not only that one may not have hit the nail on its head, but I was very close to what may have happened.
Mr. Dulat, General Durrani has written about approaches from Western diplomats about Spy Chronicles. Was there a similar interest in Delhi? And why such cloak and dagger in this one? Why do intelligence operatives have to contact? Somebody from the embassy could have tried to reach out. Did you have any such overtures? Did somebody make such an overture?
No, nobody made an overture to me, neither from Delhi nor from any of the Western spooks. But what General Saab has written in his book is absolutely correct. Because, what is well known is that people there are very much interested in what happens between India and Pakistan and more broadly in the region. And that if these two madcaps have been talking, what have they been talking about? And what are their views? And do they reflect at all the views of the establishment in any way? Which they don't. I mean, our views were our views. So, but just to go along with, the General Saab, General has a lot of more spooky stuff to reveal. But I would say it's well known that the Brits, the Americans, the Canadians are very much interested, and all the track tour that has happened since 2008, I think it goes back to after what happened in Mumbai, that the West has been very, very active and very concerned about, the thinking. At least get to know, if you can't get anything more, at least get to know what these guys, how they think and what is their thinking. And then possibly a little more than what could be the thinking of the establishment. And talking of the establishment, and you mentioned this earlier, which is a fact that the army has a huge role in Pakistan. The impression that we have got over the last couple of years is that there is an army chief in Pakistan now who is very peace-minded, and his first priority, we were told here in Delhi, that his first priority was peace with India. And Imran Khan used to talk the same language. Now, how and why that language has changed, or why should you give up on whatever you believe in? And I'm pretty sure that people in the West would like this to happen. However much they enjoy the tamasha, but at the same time, there is this concern that, these two nuclear countries, if something gets out of control, you have another Balakot or a bigger Balakot, then what happens then? So there is this concern. And General Saab has friends all over, so they would meet up with him. At the most, I got some vague people talking to me, and I was intrigued because there were the Japanese talking to me at one stage, and they seemed inquisitive about the book. But other than that, no, nothing more than that.
General, what is your view? Why all this? Were they trying to suggest that you write another book, follow up?
Yes, yes. I think this is not only expected, but this is also demand that after, having gone through these 2 or 3 books, the second book or the main book just got drowned because of the noise created by Spy Chronicles and later on because of this novel, that one should try and, try and sum it up. Some people have suggested to, honor restored or something. But I did not have that thing in mind. I do not think that I lost any honor. In fact, you'll be surprised. Despite everything, within the institution, outside the institution, because of all these developments, I do find that people are quite actually not only sympathetic, but they're quite appreciative of whatever Anand has done, including my writing this book with Mr. Dulat. People do not know how much it has been appreciated within the institution. Some people have said, "Sir, this is a fantastic book. This is," and I said, "Yes, of course, it's a trailblazer." Some other people will come and write on the same lines, or at least, the concept will be the same from both sides. There may not be intelligence teams, but, some important military people. So that is likely to happen. So the whole thing is not finished as yet. Although, Anand, frankly, there is one thing that I wanted to write for a long, long time, and I think that would be the project worth pursuing. I do not think that I am going to make any history, but somehow or other, because of this, all this experience, I think sleepwalking through history is one good title that I have in mind.
I'm going to ask you one more question, General. Honor Among Spies has been referred to as a work of fiction, but we all know that it is not quite that. It's more a biography with pseudonyms for the main actors. It's mostly about your travels, about the problems you faced co-authoring the Spy Chronicles with Mr. Dulat. But there are nuggets, there are nuggets that, for me at least, remove some cobwebs. Uh, you suggest in Honor Among Spies that after what happened uh, in promoting the Islamic Jamhuri Ittihad, which brought Nawaz Sharif to power, you were hung out to dry virtually. Um, can you take us to that phase? But let me, for everybody around, just tell you that the situation in the ISI at that moment in time, and this is from an outsider, not an insider. Benazir, using the fiasco in Jalalabad, where the Mujahideen failed, used that as an opportunity to get rid of Hamid Gul, the legendary Hamid Gul. Everybody calls him the legendary, but there are opinions on that. And appointed Shamsur Rehman Kallu, if I'm not mistaken, a retired army officer, as the DGISI. General Durrani, you were the DGMI at that moment in time, and we all know that all the sensitive stuff which ISI was handling, Kashmir and other core areas, were transferred to MI and during Kallu's tenure. The MI, in a sense, ran rings around the ISI, and at that stage, ISI was important, but MI was more important to at least the military. You obviously enjoyed General Beg's trust because he moved you to the ISI at that point of time. And as we often have refrained in my own setup, you moved to ISI with your Bori and Bistar, that is all your sources and your assets, you moved across there. Tell us about that phase. Tell us what really happened. Why did Beg turn against you? I mean, you obviously were one of the preferred officers.
I think there is a little misconception about a few things. MI could not have taken over from the ISI. One did not have, the resources, the reach out to certain things, the mandate, the expertise. So the ISI remained whatever the ISI was doing, and Kallu actually was quite a good man to help the ISI. Personally, there was a personality problem between him and Beg, that aside. When the whole thing was over, that critical phase was over, yes, I was pushed into the ISI. I may have been his favorite as the MI man, and later on when I came there, when he turned against me was much later because of certain operations that he carried out. And he was thinking that I was supposed to, keep a lid on them. And I would have done that, except that he himself came up with a statement which forced my hand. And when he did that, I had to come out and say, sorry, this is not how it happened. The mastermind of that operation was Beg. And when I said that, and after that, the man did get upset. And now I think it is no secret at all. You said that there's no secret at all. At the approach, at the right time, opportune moment, he belongs to, he and Bajwa, they both come from the same unit. So through his unit officer, who is now the army chief, he wanted to get to me. I just simply describe it that during the service, someone like me who has not been very careful, a little reckless at times, did ruffle a few feathers, and to believe that well, one will always get away with that. That would be wrong. The Subri thing catches up with people. So in my case, I think it had to be done probably in this manner. I do not have any, I don't hold, uh, it against anyone. Certainly not the institution. A couple of individuals, they are individuals. I'm an individual. I in my own personal capacity. So we'll settle it in our own way, not the institution.
General, I've been General Durrani and Mr. Dulat. It's been a pleasure being on this session with you. I hope that we have an opportunity to meet again, perhaps one of those track 2 dialogues with the general is not very confident about. Brings us together at least once more, or a couple of times more. But before then, let me make a plug for General Durrani's book. Everybody, this is the book, Honor Among Spies. And what's fascinating about it is it's freely available here, but it's not available in Pakistan. So those of you who, please do buy it. And Mr. Dulat, we're waiting for your next book. Probably a sequel to Spy Chronicles or whatever, but we'll work. You should be working on that now.
Well, first, let me congratulate the general on a fantastic book. Very brave book and well written. Whether it's fiction or not doesn't matter. And he talked about sleepwalking through history. But I'm prepared to do another one with him, and we could call it Adversaries as Friends, or whatever he likes. Yes, I am struggling with the idea of fiction, and I'm not as good as he is, but maybe I will give it a bash, try and write some kind of fiction.
Thank you very much. I think all this praise, hopefully one has deserved a part of it, but let me say that I have had to mobilize my old resources. I'm getting these books smuggled into Pakistan. From the Indian border is going to be difficult, but through Afghanistan. How was that? Anand, you are an Afghan expert, Afghan hand as well. So we'll get these books all right in Pakistan, but through Afghanistan.
Great. Thank you. This has been such a fantastic conversation. General Durrani, thank you. Mr. Dulat, and thank you for moderating this conversation, Mr. Anand. Thank you very much.